Thank you, Drayton, to be here, and it's a pleasure and an honor to have you for the first episode of Copywriter View. So first, I'd like us to talk about your career and this episode where you sold your company to David Ogilvy, and then we'll focus on one of your copy for Fauna and Flora International. And finally, we'll talk about your vision of the copywriting for the years to come, and also your book. Okay, so can you present maybe briefly yourself for people that may
I will tell you more than anybody needs to know about me. I started out in journalism because I went to university and I walked out because I wanted to write. So I started a journalism when I was 19, before your father was born. I was making no money. I had a house, the only house in the row of houses that had a bathroom. All the other houses didn't have bathrooms. Yeah?
That's nice.
The reason for this was I discovered sex in about 1952, but I didn't discover contraception. So I was there with a wife and children, no money. And a friend said, you would do well in advertising. And I went to the public library in Manchester, which is where I lived, near where I lived. And I read all the books on advertising, both of them. And one of them was called Copy, the Core of Advertising. And I read it and I thought, this is for me. And then I spent 6 months looking for a job. Eventually I got a job in Liverpool. Then I got another job in Manchester. Then I got another job in Manchester. And then I came down to London. And I became a creative director at quite a good agency in London. When I was about 26, I think, something like that. And I got very fascinated with mail order, selling remotely. And I walked out of my creative director's job to join a company that sold mail order. And one of the things they sold was a product called the Bullworker. And the Bullworker was an exercise device, which makes you big and strong. And that product sold all over the world. It still sells today. And strangely enough, it sells to copywriters. There are a surprising number of copywriters have bought the Bullworker.
Okay. I don't know what it is.
But that really got me involved in the mail order business. And then the company I was working for went broke. And I got a job in what was then the hottest advertising agency in the world, called Papert, Koenig & Lois, run by lunatics. And then after that, I started my own mail order business.
Okay.
That went broke because I didn't know what I was doing. One week we were in the Times newspaper as the future of business, and the next week we were going broke. I then spent 7 years living under a false name. I used my second wife's first husband's name. So for 7 years, I was David D. McMahon. And I did anything to make money. And one of the things I did to make money was sell swimming pool franchises. And you are looking at the man who sold the franchise to France
I didn't know
at 2 o'clock in the morning in a club on the Ile-de-France for a lot of money. And the gentleman I sold it to was Monsieur le Comte Philippe Jalon de la Boe. I remember he introduced me to a lovely lady that night. He was very grateful, and so was I. I then went to Germany to try and sell Germany. But unfortunately, although I speak French, I speak un français dégueulasse.
That's okay.
I remember I ran an ad in Le Figaro looking for investors, and a friend in advertising in Paris gave me an office that I could use. And the first prospect, we ran an ad in Le Figaro. We got lots of replies. I'm good at writing ads that get lots of replies. And the first month came in and I said, "Bonjour, monsieur, est-ce que vous parlez anglais?" And he said, "Absolument pas." And I realized I had to improve my French very quickly. I had actually learned French. I lived en famille when I was 16 in Paris, and also near Lons-le-Saunier, near Switzerland. And that's where I learned French a little bit.
So you wrote an actual advertisement fully in French on yourself?
No, I don't think I did. I think my friend, who was a copywriter in an agency in Paris, wrote it. Although, interestingly, I think we're talking about a charity mailing today. Well, I sold what happened was that after the 7 years, I then started an agency. We had no money. Well, I had £700. Neither of my partners had money. And within, I think, 3.5 years, we were the biggest direct marketing agency in Britain. And all the advertising agencies were very keen on buying direct marketing agencies at that time. And we were the biggest. So we were approached by, I think, 8 of the top 20 agencies in the world. And one day I wrote a letter to Campaign, which was an advertising magazine full of rubbish, because somebody had said something rude about David Ogilvy. And I said, "This man is an idiot." And the next thing that happened was that the next day the phone rang, and I had an office in Covent Garden, very smart. And the voice at the other end said, "Hello, David Ogilvy here. That was a nice letter that you wrote." I had already communicated with Ogilvy. 10 years before, 12, when I was working for Papert, Koenig and Lois, I lost my job because it was a very political agency. And one of the other people there was a very, very successful guy who actually wrote a very successful book called A Year in Provence. And he'd worked for Ogilvy in Paris, sorry, in New York. And he said, "Why don't you write to David Ogilvy for a job?" So I wrote David Ogilvy a letter which began with the words, I wish I'd kept it. I only remember the beginning. I just said, "Dear Mr. Ogilvy, you've never heard of me, but I have a quality I know you prize. I know how to make people buy things." And he replied instantly. He arranged an interview, but I never went because I had children here and I didn't want to leave them.
Oh, okay.
So when he approached me again, I think he remembered that he'd written to me before. And the day after he rang me in Covent Garden, the head of Europe for Ogilvy rang me up and said, "Oh," I said, "that was a very nice letter you wrote about David in Campaign." And I turned to my PA and I said, "Ogilvy want to buy us." And so they did buy us. We were negotiating until 10 o'clock the night before with another agency, but I decided I would go with Ogilvy because I thought they had the right approach to training. The head of creative there was a guy that I knew who had offered me a job in London before going to New York. So I sold out to them. And I was very lucky because I got on well with Ogilvy. My favorite meeting with him in the first month was in Amsterdam. And I get lost everywhere. And I'd gone to Amsterdam and I went to the wrong office. So I ran along a canal to the right office, and I arrived at the right office, sweating like a pig and smelling of cologne, because in those days I used to wear a lot of cologne because I was always chasing women and failing to catch them. Yeah. And David was sitting in a room there on a settee, and he said, "Oh, Drayton," he said, "come and sit here." And I sat down next to him, and he said, "Is that you?" He said, "You smell like a horse boudoir." And I said, "How do you know, David?" And we just got on very well. And I went to visit him at the Chateau Tufu 2 or 3 times, maybe more. He was a very interesting man. Okay. If he liked you, you got on okay. And I think I got on well with him because I wasn't frightened of him. A lot of people were frightened of him. If you did anything stupid, you were in trouble. I remember that very day in Amsterdam, all the people from the agencies around Europe were presenting their agencies, say what they were doing. And the man from Switzerland got up and he showed a picture of the agency and he talked about where it was and this, that, and the other. And eventually David said in a loud voice, "I can't stand another minute of this." And he walked out. Yeah. So if you said anything stupid, you're in trouble.
Oh my God.
So that was really how I got involved in the agency. And then they made me the worldwide head of creative on the direct side.
Nice. Did you continue to write when you were at
I had to handle the American Express account all over the world. And eventually Ogilvy was bought by Martin Sorrell, and I left. And I remember I was walking in London one day and Martin was sitting in a garden near his office. And he said, "Oh, hello, Drayton." I said, "Hello, Mark." And he said, "How are you?" I said, "I think I'm going to quit." And he said, "Why would you do that?" I said, "I don't want to spend the rest of my life working like a dog to pay back all the money that you've borrowed to buy us." But funnily enough, when I first worked with Ogilvy, I went to Paris. David used to go there a lot, but I went there to help the guy who was running the Ogilvy Paris office, a man called Philippe Defrenois, a brilliant man. And I wrote some copy for them to sell trips to a hotel somewhere outside Paris. But I always remember he did a fantastic television commercial, which I have somewhere, for Médecins Sans Frontières, one of the best commercials I've ever seen. And when I used to go around the world training people, I would show them this commercial, which seemed to me a coincidence that I should be talking to you in Paris, where I've spent many, many happy hours and where I've worked, and where I worked with this man who did fantastic work for charity, and we're talking about a charity mailing.
Yeah, that was original. I wasn't expecting talking about charity copywriting, to be honest, but that's a nice support.
I thought you wanted to talk about the one I did for
LexiNexi?
For the charity. No?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about the one for Fauna and Flora International, right?
Yeah, charity.
Yeah,
I've done a lot of work for charity.
Yeah,
a lot.
I didn't know you were working a lot with charity, to be honest.
I have worked originally when we had our own agency. I first of all did a little bit of work for Oxfam, which was very big. Then I did advertising for Dr. Bernardo's, which is a children's charity. At one point, I used to joke that we had everything. I had the Royal National Institute for the Blind. Yeah, I had the deaf. I had helped the aged. I had helped the children, save the children. And I said, all I'm looking for now is a charity for the middle-aged. We have everything else. Huh?
Nice. Okay. So that was a nice overview of your huge career. So now you're more on the web part, right? I mean, you have your own agency, but I've seen you
Yeah.
also have your Drayton Ask website.
Drayton, yeah.
When did you start it?
Whew. 10 or 11 years ago.
Oh.
I think. I realized almost immediately that media do not change human beings. At the moment, there is a big fashion for digital. And everyone says, oh, digital, we must have digital. They seem to imagine that when I see you on here, I change you into a different animal. I'm the same person. I'm frightened about the same things. I'm greedy about the same things. I'm worried about the same things. I'm excited about the same things. I'm angry about the same things. I'm just looking at a screen. I'm not a different person.
Yeah.
You know, and this is a big mistake that people make. People in advertising, marketing, imagine fondly that they are professionals. They're not. They're a bunch of cowboys. They think they're like lawyers. This is ridiculous. The word marketing was first mentioned in 1904. Huh? Mm-hmm. When I came into advertising, it wasn't until 1971 that I heard anybody talk about marketing.
Okay.
The first job I had in London was marketing. But when you think that the first legal set of laws was put in place around about 5000 BC in Babylon, yeah? And that marketing didn't exist until just over 100 years ago, and that most of the people in it don't know what they're doing, it's not like the law. It's not like medicine. It's not a profession. It's a business full of cowboys and people who people who think that if they're charming enough, people will buy something from them.
So do you consider yourself as a cowboy too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been around for a lot of years to see how marketing and advertising has evolved. Did you notice some big difference with the coming of internet? Like
the arrival of the internet.
Yeah. Did you see
the internet is the difference between the internet is a medium.
So no difference.
Just as the post was a medium, television was a medium, radio was a medium, posters are a medium.
Yeah.
The difference is that it enables you to do a lot more, as we're doing now. And this gives the unparalleled opportunity to make more mistakes faster than ever before, if you don't know what you're doing.
Okay.
So I write, for instance, I write emails 5 days a week. 5 days a week, send out an email to our list, and I write that email pretty much all year round. So, but do I think that I should ignore the things that I've learned from writing everything else? Of course not. The principles are the same. The only problem is that with an email, you don't really find it easy to calculate or to know the results of what you've done. So let's compare it with a piece of direct mail. If I write a piece of direct mail, between the time I have the idea and the time it goes out, if it's a big company like American Express, say that it takes 6 weeks. I write an email today. Yeah? I can get up in the morning, and this is usually what happens. Yeah, I'll get up in the morning. I will have an idea. I will then dictate the email into this little machine. send it to my PA. She will transcribe it and send it back to me. I will then edit it. She will then send it back to me. I will then edit it again. And then she will send me a test, and then I'll edit it slightly. And then it will go out between 12 and 1. And the only thing I will know normally is how many people opened it. This is no guide to the result. Right? It's got very little to do with it. I don't know how many actually read it. I don't know how many replied until much later. Very few reply to an email. Very, very low rates. So the potentiality of measurement is weakened beyond belief compared to if I wrote my direct mail. It took me, I know how many people replied. You know? I know how many people bought. So most people do not buy as a result of an email. That's a very, very weak medium.
That's a bit
so it's a medium that everyone uses because it's free. They think it's free. It's not free. It costs two things. Yeah, it costs my time thinking of how to write it. Yeah, a small fee for sending it out, and the price of other people's patience in having to bloody read it. Yeah. It's a very, and so everyone thinks, oh, it's free, it's free. Nothing in life is free.
Okay. Yeah? So did you get better result with direct mail marketing versus email marketing?
Well, I mean, if we're talking about the thing I did for Fauna and Flora, within a very short period of time, 10 days, I think, it brought in over £100,000. Yeah? That's a big difference. The big difference between, I sent out this email, it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant. People write me nice lessons about it. I don't know whether it made any money or not. Yeah. Okay. Because lots of other things could have made it make money, like other emails I sent out. Yeah. Okay. That's a different animal. So very unreliable animal.
Yeah. Let's switch actually. So let's switch to this copy from for Fauna and Flora International.
Yeah.
Can you tell me the context around this copy? Like, did they contacted you? Did they know you before to contact you?
They had started working with us because I like working with charities. There's another charity I work with in Ireland, which is the biggest children's charity in Ireland.
Okay. So you contact,
I think there are 3 or 4 charities we work with. I work with charities because I think it's a good thing. I work with, in particular, Fauna and Flora, because I think they are dealing with the most important single issue in our lives. They are dealing with the things which are making the world impossible to live in. The reason the world is becoming impossible to live in is because of a nice advertising expression, which is you might like to think about, and that it's a word. The word is consumer. People are referred to as consumers.
But you're consumers. The guy making them consume.
We are all put into the world to consume, yeah, to consume, and we are consuming so fast that there will be no world in 100 years, not as it is now, because everything is vanishing. And Fauna and Flora were particularly concerned with the thing which has led to the coronavirus, because the coronavirus almost certainly came through the transportation of wild animals to consumers in China, yeah, where they love to eat strange things. There is an English hymn, which the opening line, it goes, all things bright and beautiful. It goes, all things bright and beautiful, the Lord God made them all. Well, nowadays we have all things bright and beautiful, the Chinese eat them all. And so there's a huge trade in animals, threatened animals, from places particularly like Indonesia to China. And there will be another outbreak like coronavirus unless something is done about it. So my interest is partly my interest in humanity. I think as I get older, I like to write about things that I think are important.
Okay. Okay, I get it. So would you mind I share my screen so we can
Sure.
Okay. Let's do this.
I'll tell you exactly how I go about doing things.
Yeah, I think that's quite a nice opportunity to have you talk about the general copy and what was your process and how did you come with those ideas and the headlines?
Well, the first thing that we do in our agency is the most important thing in writing copy. And that is the brief. The most important single thing in writing copy is the brief. How good is the brief? So we have a thing we call the briefing template. And this was created because these things evolve. It's about 32 questions that people have to answer before we do the work. It was evolved actually by the lady who's sitting, maybe 15 yards from me, who used to work for me. She's Italian. She was a PhD in philosophy. And she worked for me for a while. And she took all the stuff that I'd given to my creative people at Ogilvy and Mather, and she edited it down to this particular thing, which answers all the questions, asks and answers all the questions you need to know before you start work.
Okay.
The brief is the most important part of the job. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what am I looking for when I write anything, but particularly in charity? I'm looking for the thing that makes all the difference in the world, which is emotion. Nobody does anything for logical reasons. Not even logical products do they buy for logical reasons. Even if you're selling something like a measuring instrument, and which I have done, the people who buy measuring instruments, which may seem a very cold subject, they actually feel very strongly about measuring accurately. So you have to find out in people, whoever you're writing to, what is the thing that motivates them most? Well, in this case, I knew that they cared because they were on a list of people who had expressed interest. Yeah. What's the next most important thing? Well, if you go up to the top, you'll see there's a picture of Mark Rose.
Yes.
People give to people. Yeah.
I see.
The next most important thing is if you've got a picture, always have a caption. The thing most remembered in any message is people's faces. Yeah? So if I can put a person's face in, I will, and then I'll know that people will read the caption, and you know that people read captions, and I'll give you an example of how you know people read captions. Yeah. Go into an art gallery, go into the Louvre if you like, and watch the people when they look at the pictures in the Louvre. What do? The first thing they all do is they look at the caption under the picture before they look at the picture.
Yeah.
The captions are important. So I've got the opportunity for him to say, please help. So I want to touch. People like the idea of being touched. Okay. And then I've got decades of work to save endangered species could be undone. Please help.
Yeah.
You have to have people in people's minds a sense of urgency that they need to do something, and you need to appeal to them, which is why we say please help, and we put quotes around the thing, because when you put a quote around something, it increases readership. One of the things that people don't understand about this business is that there are tiny little differences that make differences, and they all add up. Yeah. Differences like what kind of typeface are you going to use? I would normally use a typeface like the one at the top, which has got the little things at the bottom, yeah, which keeps people on the line.
Yeah.
Okay, so there we have, dear so-and-so, we have a clear plan. So I've said we've got to do something about it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I relate it to the current crisis. You always relate it to what's in people's minds. And then you use something which is incredibly important. And this is called flattery. Mm-hmm. Make your prospect feel good about him or herself. Basically, what I'm saying here is that other people are idiots, but you're not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm saying, as you know, at times of crisis such as this, you only see two types of you. Those who do nothing, frozen like deer in the headlines, and those who leap into action and tackle the problem. So I start by flattering them, saying, as someone who already gives regularly, you, thank goodness, belong to the second group. You realize our world is in peril and you refuse to stand by doing nothing. So you're a hero.
Yeah.
So I'm flattering you. Yeah. So then we go. And all I think about when I write a line is what do I follow up with the next line? Yeah.
Okay.
The next line, the only purpose of each line is to make people read the next line. Yeah? Now, here we see mistakes made by the client. Here's the one mistake. Okay. After over 25 years, blah, 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 two things are crystal clear to me. One is that we will do everything in our power to protect our precious natural world. The other is that we cannot do it without your help. That should have been broken after the word precious to make sure that people would read on. Yeah? So these are little tricks that matter. Let's go on.
I didn't know that.
The challenge we face is daunting, but we have a plan to ensure that come what may, there's no faltering in the progress towards safeguarding endangered species that your support has already made possible. Flatter them, so you've already made it possible. Yeah. And then we explain how and why what is possible is going to take place. And it can continue for a simple reason. We already work in many areas where the impact of COVID-19 on those species is most severe. What's more, because we are already there on the ground, we are uniquely able to deliver a well-targeted, rapid, effective support that will have a lasting impact. Yeah.
Okay.
So every bit of your argument has to be like a jigsaw puzzle. Always, everything fits in with everything else. So every time I write something, I think when I write a sentence, I think, how can I make sure people will read the next sentence? Okay. Yeah.
So how did you come with the overall structure of the copy? I mean, because we see that if I make the structure clear, is like COVID-19 has made things worse, so it's urgent for you to act now, and we have a plan. And then you say you list, so it's after that you list like all the projects you've done since the last 25 years. And then you say why basically FFI is the best option they have to help the planet. And so this is the overall structure, but how did you come up with it?
How did I come up with what?
With the overall structure of the copy. I mean, do you write it like in one way, or do you?
How do I write?
Do you write first the headline?
I write the copy the same way that I write my emails.
Okay.
I dictate everything.
Okay.
I even dictate. I'm working on 2 books at the moment, and I dictate the books as well. I dictate them because it's quicker. I have a lot of ideas, and the quicker I can get them out, the better I am. I dictate them because a lot of people actually read what you say in their minds. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So dictation gives you a natural flow. Yeah.
Okay.
That's going to fit in with the way people read. I dictate them because it's quicker in the sense that I have a lot of ideas. I mean, I'm very, very old. I'm 84, but I still have a lot of ideas. And I get very upset if I have an idea and I forget it. It drives me crazy. Huh? So I do it for that reason. So I will dictate this sort of thing, and it will not be like this. It will be, I'll dictate this bit and that bit and the other bit and the other bit and the other bit, and then I have a lot of stuff. Okay. And then I start trying to organize it. Mm-hmm. And very often I do one thing with a client. People think that they have to sell the idea to their client. Well, I go about it in a different way. I write to the client and say, I was thinking of beginning with something like this. What do you think? And the client, well, if the client likes it, then something has happened, interestingly, in the relationship between you and the client. Now the client is not somebody you are selling something to. The client is somebody who's already agreed that what you're going to do is right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything about this business is, everything in life, is about persuasion. Yeah. Persuading. Yeah. So if you can get other people on your side before you even begin, that works pretty well. There are many things about this that I don't like.
About your copy?
The principal one is the typeface.
Oh.
This typeface, a sans serif typeface, is harder to read than a typeface with serifs, such as the one that I had at the top. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's fashionable, and idiots. I can't do anything about idiots. You can't do anything about idiots. I've given up.
I have a question. I have a question about this specific headline. So, are you using purposefully like the FOMO? Do you know what is FOMO? Fear of missing out.
Promo?
No, FOMO. Fear of missing out. Do you know what it is?
No, I don't know. I don't know the word.
Okay, so it's a psychological effect. When people they hate losing $10 than winning 20, basically. You know, we hate losing.
Oh, you mean you're talking about the size of the type?
No, no. It's like the fear of missing something, basically. So, are you playing with the fear of missing something here?
I don't understand you.
Oh, okay.
All I'm doing there, I did not do the layout. I would not have had that green.
Okay. Okay.
That's the only thing I can say about that.
Okay.
It looks too. I like letters to look like letters, and the more old-fashioned, the better, and they do better as well when they look old-fashioned.
Maybe we can talk about this slogan. Did you come up with it, or
no? It's not. No, it's not.
Sure. So you just integrated it in your copy.
It's something that they do. It was a way of saying, for every £1 you give, we'll double your impact. You know. So that was a way of doing it, and that was actually my art director who did that.
Okay. 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 So pictures are. Is it you or is it?
People love animals.
That's true.
And this is about animals, and it's true.
I see. Maybe
there's a tremendous amount of research into the different places where they operate, because they're a very, very, very worldwide operation, you know.
Yeah. So maybe something that could be interested is, why did you put this postscriptum at the end?
In a letter, the thing that is remembered most is the PS, not the beginning, the PS. When people get a letter, their minds automatically want to go to the signature. Who signed it? Yeah. So the PS is incredibly important. And very often I'll do a PS and a PPS and a PPPS. Yeah.
I see.
And the most important thing, this that we just mentioned, don't forget you are not alone, for generous funders have already agreed to donate up to £1 million. Yeah. So whatever you give may be worth double. So in the PS, you always put the most important thing. Yeah.
Okay. That's pretty effective. I liked it. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we can stop sharing the screen and talk more about copywriting in general.
Okay.
That was a nice letter. So before we finish about this letter, maybe you can tell us what are the specifics about raising money versus writing to sell something, because when you
writing to sell,
yeah, you're targeting a desire, but what is the desire when you raise money? What do people earn when they give you money, basically?
When you say what do they earn, what do they get for
what? Yeah, exactly.
You mean the donors? What do they get?
Yeah, what desire are you using when you trying to convince them?
The desire to be good.
Okay.
The desire to feel good.
Okay.
You know, all copy must appeal to basic human instincts. Yeah. It must appeal. It must frighten you. It must make you happy. It must shock you. It must amaze you. It must worry you. It must make you happy. Okay. If you don't tap into human desires, forget it. Yeah.
So that's what you're targeting, is like the desire to be a good person.
Well, again, you have to spend most of your time in copy before you write a word. And what you must spend most of that time doing is thinking about where the money comes from. Yeah. There was a man, an American bank robber in New York, who kept on being caught by the police. This is about 80 years ago. And eventually a New York policeman said to him, "Why do you keep robbing banks?" And he said, "Because that's where the money is."
That's a smart answer.
So the biggest bank that we have is in people's heads and in their hearts. Yeah.
Yeah. So
the proper study of my favorite, I have many quotations. I'm very fond of quotations, but perhaps my favorite quotation, maybe, is from an English poet who said, "The proper study of mankind is man." The proper study, and I used to, I do a lot of public seminars, and I often used to ask the audience, "Can anyone tell me you tell me what you think is the most popular sport in the world?" And people say, "Oh, soccer, whatever." And I say, "No, it isn't. I'll tell you, do you know what it is? It's watching people."
Definitely, I like that too.
We love to watch people.
Yeah. So
come on.
Yeah. So copywriting, as I understand it, is like understanding deeply human psychology and human needs and human instinct. So how do you learn more about human? Is it only by watching people around you, or do you have other way to learn more?
Well, I think there are so many ways of learning about people. It's not true. I was very lucky when I went for my first job as a copywriter. It took me months to get an interview, and I went to miles away to Liverpool from Manchester, which takes 2 hours. And I got there, and the man said, we don't normally hire copywriters. You have to go through the ranks before you become a copywriter. Why should I give you a job as a copywriter? And I said because I think it's very important for a copywriter to understand people. And he said, yes. He said, well, what? You're young. How come you understand people? I said, I was brought up in a pub. I spent my young life watching people drinking. I really understand people. And he said, why else should I give you a job? So I said, well, I'm very knowledgeable. I said, I think a copywriter needs to know about a lot of things. A good copywriter has to be very curious, inquisitive. And he said, really? He said, what's the difference between the way a 2-stroke engine works and a 4-stroke engine works?
Actually, no.
By chance, I knew. Yeah. I can't even drive. To this day, I've had Rolls Royces and Bentleys, but I cannot drive. But all my wives and girlfriend, they've been able to drive. So I knew the difference, and I explained. He said, that's true. He said, what's the name of the Plymouth Evening newspaper? Plymouth is a city down in. I said, I had no idea. He asked me 10 questions, and he said, yeah, he said, you are very knowledgeable. He said, why else should I give you a job? I said, I can write. He said, can you? I said, yes. He said, show me what you've written. And I used to write the editorials for this magazine that I worked for when I left university. And he said, if you can write, he said, I'll give you a job. And then he said, how much are you getting paid? And I said, I get paid £7 a week. This is true. This is what's happened to money.
£7 a week. That's a few.
Yeah. He said, all right, we'll pay you £7 a week. So I said, the thing is, I have to come from Ashton-under-Lyne, which is where I lived, into Manchester, catch the train to Liverpool every day.
Oh my God.
He said, all right. He said, we'll pay you £9. So I used to get up every morning at 6 o'clock, and I would take the train into Manchester, and then I would take the train to Liverpool. And I had no money. So I used to go to the market and buy bread and cheese. French cheese, you will be delighted to know.
Yeah. Come on. Is there
Camembert
in Drayton?
I still have Camembert here. I eat a lot of cheese. Camembert. So the other days I used to buy tins of ham. And so I'd buy a loaf, and then I'd eat half the loaf on Monday with cheese, half a loaf on Tuesday with ham. And that's how I got going. And
how long did it last, this job? How long did you write for them?
I worked for them for about, I think 15 months. And they said to me, you're not very, we like our young men to wear a hat. You wear these fancy waistcoats and also you swear a lot. And you have been heard saying rude things about the deputy chairman. Okay. And I thought, fuck this. And I wrote my first really successful direct mail. I wrote 5 letters to 5 agencies in Manchester, and 2 of them offered me a job, and I got a job with one of them. And after a bit, the boss who ran a restaurant, I don't think he knew anything about advertising. He called me and he said, Bird, he said, we're thinking of starting a public relations division. And he said, you seem a bright young lad. How would you like the job? And I said, I'm not very keen, Mr. Knowles. I said, public relations is to advertising as perjury is to lying.
Oh.
And he said, well, it's either that or we're going to have to get rid of you. And I said, I'm your man, Mr. So I did public relations for about 5 months. And then he said, this isn't really working. We're going to have to let you go. And I started laughing. And he said, why are you laughing? In the north, in the south, they say laughing. And in the north, they say laughing. So I said, why are you laughing? So I said, well, what do you want me to do? So he said, look, he said, you seem a bright young lad. He said, I'll speak to Mr. Poacher next door and see if they'll see you. And next door was the biggest advertising agency outside London. And I got in there, I got an interview with Mr. Poachin, who got me an interview with the creative director. And the creative director, I went in to see the creative director, a man called Keith Ride. And he said, do you have any views on advertising? And I talked for half an hour. And a friend of mine, a man who became a friend of mine, very interesting man, actually. He was he had been a member of the Central Committee of the Communist Party in Britain. Anyhow, he came in after me, and this guy, Keith Ride, said, you know what, Rufus? He said, I've just had a young man in here. He knows more about advertising than I do. Because I'd read every book. I read all the books.
What were the book at the time? What were your favorite book at the time?
On advertising, the only book I'd read at that time, the first one was called Copy, the Core of Advertising. But since then, I read a lot of books, anything. Ogilvy hadn't been written then. Okay. At the moment, I'm in the middle of writing a book about Claude Hopkins, who was the greatest copywriter ever. And it's a very interesting story. A young man in Africa called Jean Petit Matter wrote to me and asked if I could get him a job with Ogilvy and Mather. And I wrote to people who'd worked for me. The people who work for me at Ogilvy and Mather now run Ogilvy and Mather in England and some of them in America as well. And I said, why do you give this guy a job? But nobody in Africa would give him a job. And then he said, I've been doing all this study into Claude Hopkins. So I said, oh. And he said, and he was very smart. He said, would you have a look? So I had a look. And I said, it's very, very interesting, very impressive. I said, but your English is not very good. Because he speaks French and African, whatever and he said, well, the book would do better if you wrote it. So I said, that's true. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll write it and you can have half the profits, Not that you make much profit out of books, but so I've been busy writing this book for the last 4 months. And then I've got another book I've got to write. Because a guy in America approached me and said he thought it would be a good idea. And there is a book, a very good book called The 100 Greatest Advertisements. Okay. And we're probably going to do a new version of that. Because I know some of the people who wrote the book, who wrote those advertisements. I worked with some of them. And I worked with other people who worked with some of them. And so I've been writing a couple of things for him to see what he likes. So my trouble is I can't stop. Okay. It's a big problem. Interferes with my drinking.
That's not a problem. I think that's nice. You keep on working. That's nice. So maybe we can talk about, it's like a classic questions, but what did you learn from your biggest failure in copywriting? Maybe was it losing a lot of money, but
my biggest well, there are so many, it's hard to keep up with them, but my biggest mistake was a double mistake. You remember I mentioned that after I was at Papert, Koenig and Lois, I went and I started my own business. And we bought a newsletter called the Business Ideas Newsletter. And it was a newsletter. It looked like a letter.
Yeah.
In, I think, 12 pages looked like typewriting. Yeah. No pictures. My partner and I decided that we would smarten it up and make it look like a magazine. Yeah? That's the first mistake we made. Look, you can go, here we are. Here's a magazine that I read every week. Yeah. The Week.
Okay.
Very good. It costs £3.99. Yeah. But if I write a newsletter, anyone can buy this. Yeah, you can buy it on the street. But if I write a newsletter, this is giving you inside information about things that other people don't hear about. Yeah? I can charge 5 times as much. Yeah? But I didn't realize that I'd taken the format that worked and turned it into the format that didn't work. And the next mistake I made, which is very important, we thought this was such a brilliant idea that we sent out a mailing to all our list on the 12th of December.
Yeah.
That is fucking stupid. On the 12th of December, everyone's thinking about Christmas. Yeah.
Oh.
December is the kiss of death. Yeah.
But if you're
so we lost a fortune. Well, that's one of many mistakes. But that's the one that lives with me, because that mistake almost ruined me. But I made another mistake which ruined me anyhow. But well, I think one of the things that why I think I'm reasonably good at what I do is because I have run businesses. I've always run businesses all the time. Most copywriters don't run businesses.
True.
They don't understand the pain of realizing you just lost a fucking fortune, you know.
Yeah.
Or eventually I had to place my creditors in a room, and all saying, "What did you do with the money? You beast."
I see.
My partner was so frightened he wanted to leave the country. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think
So
when I deal with clients, I have lived what they live. Yeah? Very few people. There are a few people who you take one of the greatest copywriters ever, an American. A couple of his ads are in the 100 Greatest Advertisements. Well, first of all, he was a great creative director, and then he retired and went into the mail order business and made a bloody fortune. Yeah, because he really knew, he understood people. You know, people that. One of the problems today is that the young people who go into advertising, where do they come from? They come from, they're educated. Huh?
Yeah, true.
They have rich parents. They've been to college. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky to because in a pub you meet people. I always remember there were 3 old guys that used to sit on there were 2 prices in the pub, more expensive for the posh people and less expensive for the working people. And there were 3 guys that I used to serve. And they spoke a patois almost in Lancashire, yeah? And they used to tell me this story every time. One of them was called Alec, and Alec was completely bald, more bald than me, and he always had his hat on. He'd come in, and his 2 friends they'd go through. It was like a routine from a comedy show. They would say, "Alec, tell young Drayton how thy wife left thee." That means how your wife left you. So they would say, "Thy wife left thee, how thy wife left thee." And Alec would go. "Went out for a loaf of bread one Saturday afternoon, never came back." You see, so I was talking to people like that all the time.
I see. So
And I lived, we had two classes of customer. We had the rich people and the poor people, and I met them all. And even then I was really interested in people.
Yeah. Okay.
Because that's where the money comes from.
That's a nice learning. We have today. It's like maybe we should go in pub and serve people and learn a lot about them by listening to their stories.
The people who made a lot of money in our business,
that's nice,
were the people I knew in the 1960s who were Americans. I met a lot of Americans who were some of the world's top copywriters. They offered me jobs. But the one that made the most money was the guy who watched people who were selling on the street. Yeah? And the thing is, if somebody sells something on the street, say if you send out a piece of an advertisement or something, maybe you get 2%, 1%, but a guy on the street, he'll get 10% of people will buy. He knows more than anyone else. Yeah. So this guy just took a guy who was selling things on the street and he filmed him and made it into a commercial. And he made so much money, he became a film producer. Yeah.
That's a nice story.
You have to watch ordinary people. You won't, you won't find out anything talking in a smart restaurant to people unless you're only selling to people who go to smart restaurants. There aren't many of them.
Okay. Thank you for your stories. It taught me a lot. Maybe we can talk about what's the difference between let's say a okay copy and a very good copy. So when you look at a copy, how can you make a difference between a copy that will make money and a copy that won't?
Number one, the element of surprise. It is surprise that makes people remember messages. And I'll give you maybe a couple of examples. The best television commercial ever made was made by some people whom I knew very slightly. I worked for the agency that one of them owned, and it was for the Volkswagen. And the commercial starts with you see a pair of headlights and there is snow everywhere. And the headlights are coming towards you. Nobody said anything. All you hear is the sound of the car. And then the car stops. And then the camera closes in on the door of the car, which opens, and a man's foot gets out and lands in the snow. And then a voice says, "Have you ever wondered how the guy who drives the snowplow gets to the snowplow?" And then it shows another pair of lights and it goes, the big snowplow coming towards and then the voiceover says, "This one drives a Volkswagen." So a perfect advertisement demonstrates, surprises, and touches the emotion. Yeah?
That's a nice one. I didn't know that. I didn't know that one.
The best commercial ever made.
Nice.
The agency I mentioned, PKL, I worked with one of the guys who did that commercial.
Okay.
Another guy that I worked with, who became a very close friend. I'm still in touch with his son. He's died years ago. God, he could drink, that man. Joe Sacco. And Joe Sacco changed with one commercial, he changed a whole industry. and it was a commercial for a detergent. And at that time, the detergent industry was dominated by Procter & Gamble and Unilever. But this one commercial changed everything. And somebody else leapt into the business. And the commercial was for a detergent that cleaned. And it didn't show a detergent. It showed a man, a knight, riding in armor, like a Cressy, with a lance. And everywhere he's going, everything is dirty, and the lance touches the surface, and it becomes clean magically. And in the background, there is a song. It goes, stronger than dirt, stronger than dirt. That completely changed it. That made the brand, the company that Colgate-Palmolive, all of a sudden became number 3, the big number 3. That was done by my friend Joe Sacco.
Nice.
You see, it touched emotions. Sacco realized that housewives hate dirt and they feel they need help. So all the good stuff is all about emotion. Yeah. Okay.
So for you, the big difference would be like a great copy. We remember the big idea around it. Like it requires a nice idea we can remember forever.
Yeah, a good copy. I mean, Ogilvy used to say, how to recognize a great idea.
Yeah.
He said, does it fit the product of perfection? Can you run it for 10 years? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Did it make you nervous when you first saw it? Yeah.
Yeah.
I always think, I always ask my PA, when I write anything, every single thing I write, my emails, I always say, what do you think, Cal? Okay. Kelly is, she's very bright. She puts up with me. It's very, very.
So, another question I have for you is, it's not really copywriting. It's like getting traffic on your copy. How to drive traffic on your copy? Because when we start as copywriter, we can write, but then we're like, okay, I want to show my copies to someone, but basically, how do you drive people onto your copy?
How do you mean? How do I ask people what they think?
No, how do you drive people on your copy? Okay, you're selling mails to your list, but how do you grow up your list, for example?
Oh, how did I grow the list, or how do I get people to read, or what?
Yeah, how do you grow your list, for example?
Oh, I grew my list by somebody explained to me, the whole concept of the email list. Mm-hmm. And I wrote to the list of people that I had, obviously, because I knew some, and I said, how would you like one helpful idea every day for 7 days? And quite a few people replied. So then I said, how would you like one helpful idea for 30 days? And that's how I started. I said, would you like a helpful idea? Mm. And again, if you go to my website, you'll see the top right, I offer 51 helpful ideas.
Yeah. So that's a magnet.
And I offer the Claude Hopkins book, which most people who write copy have never read, which is unbelievable. It's rather like saying I'm a Christian, but I've never heard of what's this book, the Bible? I never heard of that. It's the interesting thing about Hopkins is that I've studied him a lot now. He was being paid the equivalent of $1.5 million a year in 1904. And he wasn't, that's what he would be today. Yeah. Okay. He was paid the equivalent of $1 million for launching Pepsodent. He did that deal twice. But when he wrote his books, his clients said, please do not show any of your advertisements. We do not want to see anyone to see what you do. So he didn't show any of his ads. So I've got hold of 7,000 of his bloody advertisements. And that's what the book I'm writing is all about. It's about, and all about how he got his ideas. He had 10 principles that he followed.
Okay.
I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. Say, I nearly went to work for Rosser Reeves, who came up with the unique selling proposition. Joe Sacco actually wanted me. He said, why don't you be... Joe was looking for people for him for a creative director. He said, why don't you go and work for... But I said, no, I'm staying in England. But so the unique selling proposition, that made an agency, But Hopkins had 10 ideas like that. He had all the ideas before anyone else, and some ideas that nobody else had.
But
his ads.
So
once you suddenly realise it's the language is a little old-fashioned, you realise that this man was so forceful, it was unbelievable. It comes out in every word. His burning desire to sell was unbelievable. Okay. Unbelievable.
So
I see I see things that he wrote that are still being copied. Well, there are other people like that. John Caples, who wrote the ad, "They laugh when I sat down at the piano." That's been copied more times than I care to think. Yeah, there is nothing new. There are only lots of people too stupid to come in and learn from the past.
Okay. No.
It's ridiculous.
So what you're saying is in his book, Scientific Advertising. So there's not all the knowledge of Hopkins in this book. He kept from it.
No, his knowledge is there, but there's no examples.
Oh.
David Ogilvy said, he said of that, but he said that this book changed the course of my life. I've read it many, many times. You can read any chapter, and if you're intelligent, you'll have an idea.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. For like, he's talking about split testing, for example. It was like a century ago. It's like increasing. Yeah, there's nothing new out there actually. When you read those old books, you realize there's nothing really new.
There's nothing new at all.
It's
nearly all the advertising today is rubbish. Absolute rubbish. The people who don't know a thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Stupid. Every day I go through the ads and I think, what is your problem?
So I think we can
idiots
conclude the interview. So can you tell us about your actual businesses aside your agency? Like today, you have your agency where you do copy. Yeah. I do believe you do copy. And you also have Ask Drayton. Is it like a side business or is it a main? Can you tell us more about
Ask Drayton is a continuity deal, what they call a continuity deal. Ask Drayton is just, well, the interesting thing about Ask Drayton is that a continuity deal, which originally was invented by, or at any rate formalized by two people in 1930, when they created a book club. But the book club wasn't really that new. They formalized the thing of saying, have one book for $1 and, we'll keep sending shit to you until you give up. So Ask Drayton is the same thing. Try the first month for $1, and then if you like it, you pay $27. The interesting thing about it is that, as far as I know, the average continuity deal, the average length of people stay on it is 4 months, between 3 and 4 months. People stay on Drayton for 10 months on average.
That's nice.
I've got people who've been on there for 10 years. Yeah.
Like
So it's full of everything that I know.
Okay.
So if you can't learn how to do marketing from Drayton, you need brain surgery. You know.
That's a nice line. Okay. So what about the revenue of Drayton? Can you tell us what do you get from just this business? How much do you get, or do you want to keep it?
I think it's none of your business. How much?
That's the correct answer, but I'm just asking questions. You're free not to answer, of course.
It doesn't matter. It's not a particularly profitable business.
Okay.
But I'm not particularly interested in making lots of money. Actually, I'm not. I did make a hell of a lot of money. I sold the agency for, I don't know.
Yeah.
Quite a lot more than $1 million. But my last wife got most of it. But no, I don't. I like teaching people.
Okay.
That's what I enjoy. And I like, particularly, I like spotting people.
What do you mean?
I've got 2 people at the moment. There's a girl I know, she's 40. This is a girl I met in a totally different context. And I said to her, you do well at copywriting. She said, I'm not interested in that. I said, do me a favor, read this little book. And I sent her Claude Hopkins' book.
At 14.
And she said, oh my God. She said, I love the idea of doing that. So I said, okay, let's see if we can find you a client.
But she's 14, right? And
so I found her a client, and I discovered something about her, which is that she's not a great copywriter, but she's not bad. She's okay. But what she's absolutely brilliant at is looking at somebody's business and finding something they could sell. So I have a guy who's been chasing me for literally years to do something with him. And I said, all right, I will work with you with this girl. I said, she'll write the copy and I'll correct everything.
Okay.
And she then produced a brilliant idea very quickly. And she's working on another one now. And I think she'll do very well.
Nice.
I'm always looking for people that I think have talent and are interesting and deserve to succeed. So I had a guy today who wants to do something with me. I will definitely do something with him if I can.
Okay.
And I said to him, you're exactly the kind of person I like to work with. Because I could see, he went to a lot of trouble for me. I was very impressed. I had a birthday party, my 80th birthday party, and people came from all over the world to get drunk with me, watch me getting drunk and fall over. Really, one of my ex-secretaries flew over from Brazil for
Nice.
And one guy who I didn't know had gone to a lot of well-known people in the business and got them to make videos saying happy birthday to me. And I was very impressed. I thought, I'll work with that guy one day and I get a chance. Now I'm just about to do something with him, I think.
Okay. So on the coming years, you're gonna focus on mentoring other people and help them grow?
I don't. People have often asked me, said, would you mentor me? And I've said, no, I just end up doing it.
But what you told me about this girl is what we can call mentoring, no?
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, that is what I do, except I don't get paid for it, you know.
Yeah, no, I know. But so what are your next big projects for, I don't know, the next year or
Oh,
so?
the only two things that I'm concerned with are the Hopkins book and the book based on the 100 greatest advertisements.
Okay, so I'll be happy to read it.
And that's it. It will be good, I can tell you.
I'm pretty sure.
I chose two that I knew a bit about, and one which I'd actually written about previously. And it's if you stay there, I think I could probably show it to you. So that's the book.
Oh, show me the 100 greatest. Oh, okay.
So
100 greatest advertisers.
That's what they want. This guy wants to do another version of it. So I'll show you the ad. But
nice.
It's full of very interesting ads. So what it is, it's a book where the people who wrote the ads, or the people who knew the people who wrote the ads, describe how they came about. Number 133.
Oh. My friend Joe Holmes is now a horse. Nice. So is it an ad from Hopkins? No.
Would you guess what it's a shirt? What it's selling?
I have no clue, honestly.
Shirts.
Really? There's no. I don't see the.
So I saw this and I wrote about it. It says, my friend Joe Holmes is now a horse.
Yeah.
Joe always said when he died, he'd like to become a horse. One day, Joe died. Early this morning, I saw a horse that looked like Joe drawing a milk wagon. I sneaked up to him and whispered, "Is it you, Joe?" He said, "Yes, and am I happy?" I said, "Why?" He said, "I'm now wearing a comfortable collar for the first time in my life. My shirt's collars always used to shrink and murder me. In fact, one choked me to death. That's how I died." So it's an ad for collar shirt, for Arrow shirts.
That's the best lead I've ever seen. That's
Yeah,
nice.
it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Where did you find it? Where did you find this ad?
Well, in here. 100 greatest advertisement.
Okay, so this guy. Okay, that's a nice.
It's full of fantastic advertisements.
I
really is.
I have to read this book.
It's a very good. It's by a guy called Julian Lewis Watkins. There are some the thing is that they tell you how the ads were written, you know.
Mm.
So I actually wrote something yesterday about that advertisement and why it's so brilliant, and how I came across the name of the man who wrote it. Because in 1972, I think, something like that, the Wall Street Journal Advertising Age ran some interviews with the world's top copywriters. Ogilvy, Raymond Rubicam, who was Ogilvy's teacher, Rossa Reeves, Bill Bernbach, and this guy I'd never heard of, who was the creative director at that time of one of the big agencies. And I was curious. I said, I've never heard of this man. Who is he? And then I saw his name there. So I keep my eyes open all the time, you know?
Yeah. Okay, that's nice.
That's the problem with the business of great creative work, yeah? Is taking two things that don't seem connected
and connect them
and putting them together. And then people go, oh, what a surprise.
Okay, that's a great example you've shown.
It's I'll finish after this, but I'll tell you one story more. My favorite client and cleverest client was the European head of the Reader's Digest, which was a huge business and very well run until they screwed it up. His name, Victor Ross, people were terrified of him because he was so clever and he didn't suffer fools gladly. And we got the Reader's Digest business. We were the only agency in the world to run advertising for them. That they do all their own stuff except for us. And I went to see to do my first presentation to them, and they said to me, "Mr. Ross will be in the audience. If he doesn't like your presentation, he won't say anything. He will just fall asleep." So Victor and I became great friends. I've almost finished, actually. So, I got him to come and talk to our creative directors in a presentation, and if I sort of get together in Spain, all our European creative directors. And he stood up and he said, he said, I used to be a writer of songs. He said, would you like me to sing you one of my songs? He said, well, I'm going to sing it anyhow. And then he started singing in a terrible voice. And then he said, you know, there are two things that good creative work is very similar to good songs and also to good jokes. He said, here's a good joke for you. He said, two men went to visit the grave of a friend. And it said, here lies Joe Bloggs, honest and upright. And one of the friends turned to the other one and said, good God, they buried Joe with two complete strangers.
I'm not sure I got it, but
honest and upright and Joe, no, Victor. Then he said, all right, he said, I'll give you an example from a pop song. And he gave examples of where things suddenly change without you expecting it. And that's what makes great copy, you know?
Okay.
No.
Story, but
that's the trick. That's the one that I told you about, the Volkswagen. It's a complete surprise, yeah?
Okay.
So that surprise fixes it in your head, yeah?
I think I get it. It's like it's what is in common with all those great advertisements. Like this idea you cannot forget and you can tell forever and forever.
It has to be unforgettable but relevant.
Okay.
I must leave you now. I think we've had a long conversation.
Yeah, it was very much longer than I was expecting. So thank you very much, Drayton. Maybe you want to tell us where we can find you after the interview?
Oh, if anyone wants to get hold of me, it's Drayton at draytonbird.com.
Okay.
And if anyone found this interesting and they want to learn more about what works and what doesn't and why, with thousands of examples, then they should just go to Ask Drayton. And then if they're feeling really, really good and generous. They can spend $1 and try a month. And then they can say, maybe he wasn't talking shit after all. So that's Drayton at draytonbird.com and Ask Drayton.
Okay.
AskDrayton.com.
So
Pleasure.
thank you very much for your time. And it was a pleasure. I learned tons of stuff. I'm still very early in learning copywriting and all this stuff. So this was helpful for me. And I think it would be helpful for many others too. So thank you, Drayton.
I didn't even get my favorite quote from Napoleon. I had lots of Napoleon quotes. It was about testing. Napoleon said, there is somebody who knows more than anybody, and that is everybody. The best argument for testing.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Ciao,
great.
ciao.
Ciao, ciao. Thank you, Drayton.
Pleasure. My little girl is now wants to watch a film with me.